Hi, this video will discuss how to solve a rational equation. The key to solving any rational equation is to get the x's usually are in the denominator, and it's to get the x's out of the denominator. And the way we do that is by multiplying through by our least common multiple, the LCM. The least common multiple is the smallest number that all the denominators will go into. All right, and the one watch out in this case is that you need to make sure you multiply every single term by that least common multiple. You cannot leave anything out. So let's look at our example 1. If we look at all our denominators and we assume our denominators like here and here are just 1, the least common multiple is just this denominator because really it's the only thing in the denominator. So what I'm going to do is multiply every single term by 5 times 2x plus 5. Okay? So I do the first term, but now I also have to do this term here. So I'm going to multiply 3 by 5, 2x plus 5. And I also have to do all the terms on the right-hand side of the equal sign. So I need to multiply -1 times 5, 2x plus 5. Okay? In my first term, notice that my denominator and my 5 times 2x plus 5, they will cancel out and just simply leave me the 2. In my next term, I end up with 15 because 3 times 5 is 15. And then the 2x plus 5. And on the right-hand side, I end up with a -5 because -1 times 5 is -5 times 2x plus 5. And now I just want to distribute to get rid of my parentheses. I end up with a 2. Here I'm going to distribute this 15, but remember, you got to distribute to everything in the parentheses. So it's 2 plus 30x plus 75, because 5 times 15 is 75. And on the right-hand side, I end up with minus 10x minus 25. And now I'm just going to combine like terms. On the left-hand side, I end up with 30x plus 77. And on the right-hand side, I end up with minus 10x minus 25. And now we've gotten this to something that we can solve fairly easily. I want to get all my x's on one side and all my numbers on the other. So I'm going to add 10x both sides. And I'm going to subtract 77 both sides. And I end up with 40x equals minus 102. All right, and so I got 40x equals minus 102. I forgot my x. I'm going to isolate x by dividing both sides by 40. And I come up with x is going to equal minus 102 over 40. Or I can reduce that down to negative 51 over 20. Okay? Really, the solving part should be pretty easy. It's just getting it to something that you can solve. And the way that we do that is multiply through by our least common multiple. All right? In this case, it was 5, 2x plus 5. All right? Similarly, let's look at this example. I've got an x and an x squared and a 2x. So I'm going to have to multiply both by x squared minus 2. Okay, and this side as well. And maybe you can see right away what's going to happen. Over here, my x squared minus 2 are going to cancel, and I end up with x. And over here, my x's are going to cancel, and I'm going to end up with x squared minus 2. Okay? And now look, you've got a quadratic, and so we want to get that equal to 0. I'm going to say 0 equals x squared minus x minus 2. And actually, in this case, I can factor this pretty easily. It's x minus 2, x plus 1. Okay, and I get that x equals 2 and x equals -1. But here is another watch out for rational expressions. I have to actually test to make sure I don't get a 0 in the denominator. Okay, wasn't really an issue here because I ended up with a fraction and that's not going to give me a 0 down here. But here it could. If I ended up with something that gives me a 0 in the denominator, then that is not actually a solution. So I need to test them. So I plug 2 in for x. I get x squared 4 minus 2. That's okay. And over here it's okay because it's 2. And then if I look at negative 1, I get 1 minus 2. That ends up being a negative 1 in the denominator. And if I plug it up in here, I get a negative 1. If you end up with something that gives you a 0 in the denominator, for example, if I would have ended up with x equals 0 as a solution here, when I plug that in, I get a 0 in the denominator. That is not a solution because this part right here becomes undefined. Okay, so another watch out when you're solving rational equations is to check your solutions and to make sure that they do not result in a 0 in the denominator. If they result in a 0 in the denominator, then they are not a solution.